Hey there friends and enemies, JoPa here again, and recently Paul Tassi from Forbes asked the question, is the era of the live service looter shooter completely over? And while there is one major exception that continues to perform above expectations, the rest have been lackluster or completely shut down in recent times. So I want to kind of go over this and talk about what the future might hold for my favorite genre of video game, one that is really lacking right now in a way that has me frustrated. So jumping right in, the main game, the first of its kind, Destiny, is now at a major crossroads, pretty much the lowest point that we've seen in history. And as somebody who has played since day one of D1, I am very concerned in a way that previous ups and downs really didn't shake me in the same way, because we've seen the end of their 10-year final shape culminating story, and after that, there's just really no desire, even from me, somebody who is stuck with it through all the ups and downs, to play the game over the course of the long haul. I still jump back in when there's new stuff. The game still feels really good to play, but ultimately, there's really no desire, nothing to chase that I'm super excited for, to the point when a new dungeon or raid comes out, I'm not really chasing all of the weapons, exotics, everything like that, like I used to. And that is something that kind of hits hard as somebody who has mained that game for so long. Now we have other games, more newer entries into the live service looter shooter, like The First Descendant, which continues to chug along and churn out content, but ultimately is not performing as well as anyone, I believe, would have hoped for. Now, they made a lot of money originally, especially with their skins and everything that they've been selling, but it really does remain to be seen how effective they will be long term without adding drastically different content from what we're seeing right now. Same thing for other games. The end of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is on the horizon. It is a game that has lasted about a year and then is going to be sunset, essentially. So that is something, again, that I've played all these games at launch. I've enjoyed them to varying degrees, but I also understand each of them has issues, and the major problem is they cannot sustain the content that is required by the player base over the long term. We saw the same thing with Marvel's Avengers and Anthem and all these other live service looter shooter games that have the foundation to be good, in my opinion, have some fun gameplay elements, but just lack that replayability necessary. And this is where Destiny 2 having PvP, I think, helped them out over the course of time, and also the fact that they were first, they got their foot in the door, and a lot of people stuck through them through thick and thin. Now, the exception that I do want to talk about before jumping into what I see going forward is going to be Warframe, which continues to put up incredible player-based numbers, even though the game is just as old as Destiny, and they've managed to reinvent that game in a way that others have struggled to compete with. They've added different content that people really enjoy. They've added new ways to play, new entry points for new players, and other factors that have separated Warframe from others. And overall, it really feels like Digital Extremes have found the winning formula with how to keep their game going over the long haul, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Yes, that game has also had ups and downs, but not to the same degree as something like Destiny or other games that we've seen. Now, going forward, the question remains, will games be live service looter shooters, or might we see more in line with like Borderlands as a looter shooter that has some online elements but isn't a week over week, season over season type of content drop? Instead, we'll get more traditional DLCs and just a standard cadence of content like that, instead of just a weekly update and seasonal events, all that kind of good stuff like we see from Destiny. And I really feel like the success of Destiny and how much money they've made over time and still not able to be profitable long term is a major warning sign for a lot of other developers, on top of these other games that have been shut down relatively quickly. And it's just very telling that while you can get players on board for a period of time, keeping them engaged over the long haul feels very, very difficult, and is something that there's so much competition in the live service space that having them consistently chasing loot and new stuff is extremely hard. You look at games like Path of Exile and Diablo that are still churning along. Path of Exile 2 looks like it's going to do incredible numbers even out of early access, which again isn't necessarily a live service game, and that might be the foundation for looter shooters going forward. Another option for this type of game is following the Remnant route for replayability with different maps, uncoverable secrets, that kind of stuff. That's not a live service game. It does have co-op matchmaking. It does have different events from time to time, but it would never be confused with a live service game. But it provides the foundation for replayability that I think these games can look forward to. Same thing with like an Elden Ring. Obviously a completely different genre, but if you have a game that has this massive map, you're exploring, you're fighting different bosses, you're experiencing different types of content within the game, not only as far as the bosses you face, the story you have, the secrets, the dungeons, that's going to be, I believe, the path forward for looter shooters going forward, instead of a base campaign and then a repeatable end game that just wears itself out far too quickly. The games that have done that, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Outriders, even games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, have really struggled because they hit a certain point where you're just playing the same thing over and over again, getting a little bit more powerful to then play the same thing over again, and there's really no variety of content there, and that is what is going to keep these players engaged. Variety of content and reason to chase loot. If I get a new weapon and then it's the best weapon in the game and I have no reason to chase other weapons, it leaves me wanting more. So you need a reason to continue to chase new fun things in different types of content, and the next content that comes out should be something that you're using your old best gear to chase that new content. And so I don't know. I just really feel like the era of the live service looter shooter might be at an end. They are very expensive. They are very hard to do. They are high risk with high reward potentially. Obviously, Destiny has been going for 10 years, supported that studio for a very long time. Warframe has been going on for a long time and supported that studio the entirety and allowed them to make Soulframe as well. But ultimately, the question remains if we will ever see another live service looter shooter come out that dominates the market in the same way as Destiny has, or if we see games taking a different route like we see with Once Human, with Dune Awakening, and these other games that have different elements as a shooter with some somewhat looter shooter stuff involved, but again, that remains to be seen. The other game that I will be very curious if it ever comes out, if we get to that point, that could really reset the market is going to be the Division 3. But after the Division 2 struggles, I don't know if that's one that we can really rely on to be the next great savior of the live service looter shooter. So gaming is cyclical. We might see the return of these types of games over the long haul. If a company is really allowed to grow a team, be innovative with the content, and showcase that they can provide the amount of content, not only when the game drops, but over the course of the next year or two. You need to launch a looter shooter game with content to keep the players engaged for the foreseeable future after the game drops. And that's something that a lot of these games get wrong, because once they start having to fix a lot of bugs, they get behind on the content cadence, and then the game falls off and it's hard to get players back at that point. Anyway, bit of a ramble from me today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think we will see live service looter shooters in the future? My name is Jopa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.